Hello, and thank you for joining us tonight for the 2022 Idaho Republican Primary Candidate Forum. My name's Daniel Silver, and I'll be your host for this evening. First, I know you had a lot of things you could be doing tonight, and we want to thank you for joining us. It's a really important thing that we're going to be watching tonight. We're going to be meeting with every single candidate who's running for statewide and federal office. And that person has the opportunity to represent you and me and all of Idaho for the next 2, 4, or even 6 years, depending upon the position. It's not something we should take lightly. So what we're going to be doing is sitting down for about 10 minutes with each of them tonight, and we're going to hear what's on their heart, learn a little bit about them, learn where they think things are going well or not within Idaho, and if given the opportunity, where would they take us in the future. Now, before we start, though, it's important to know that as an organization, Idaho Young Republicans does not endorse any candidate during the primary season. That's not our role. Instead, we want to make sure that you're as informed as you can be. And so that's our hope, that you get an opportunity tonight to learn about each and every candidate, and then you know what's best for you and your family. You know what's best to take you into the future. We just hope we can make that decision a little easier for you. Tonight, we're going to start with the position of Superintendent of Public Instruction, otherwise called Superintendent of Schools. And it's an extremely important role. Throughout COVID over the last few years, parents have gotten a first-hand view of exactly what's going on in their child's classroom. And we hear it every day from our members. Some things they really enjoyed. To be honest, some things they were really concerned about. And whoever's elected into this role is going to have an opportunity to take that in whatever direction they want every day as they head into the office. It's a big deal. We have 3 candidates that are running for statewide office today for Superintendent of Public Instruction. And the first one we're going to be talking with is Brandon Durst. Brandon, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate the time.
Yeah. So let's just start off with an easy one. What should we know about you?
I guess the most important things to know about me is that I'm a Christian, I'm a husband, I'm a dad to 5 awesome kids, I'm native to Idaho, and I love education. I love the role that education plays in the development of our society, and I want to be a part of that.
So, State Superintendent of Public Instruction over schools. What made you want to run for that, and what makes you uniquely qualified?
Well, let me address the second part of your question first. I've got a master's degree in public policy, and I have an ed specialist degree in executive educational leadership. I just earned that degree this year at Boise State. So academically, I'm incredibly well qualified for this position. In fact, I'm uniquely qualified. I have both understand the education space as well as the public policy space, which are really the critical places in this role. I've worked as a small business owner. I have been a state legislator. In fact, I served in both the House and the Senate. I'm the author of one of the most successful education programs in the state of Idaho, the Advanced Opportunities Program. I was a co-author of that program. And so I've got a lot of experience that, frankly, has never been seen in the state superintendent's office here in Idaho, at least. In fact, I'll be the very first state superintendent who have ever served as a member of the state legislature. And I think that's pretty interesting. So why am I running? What got me into this race? Well, I'm a parent, and I've seen what's happened in our schools, and I've got very concerned about those things. And I waited and waited for our current superintendent to step up and do something about it, and I just didn't see that happen. And so I really want to put parents back in the driver's seat of their kids' education. I believe we need to have someone who prioritizes parents first and foremost. And so that was really the impetus behind me choosing to get involved in this race. It takes a lot of time away from your family, away from your work, but it's important. Frankly, the direction that our schools go is the same direction our society is going to go. And so I feel quite called and led to be a part of that. And I'm grateful for the outpouring of support I've seen from Idahoans throughout the state of Idaho, from Boundary County to Bear Lake County, who want to see change and who want to really empower families, empower parents back to making decisions for their kids.
So, when you think about, like, say, the last 2 years, for all the downsides that came with COVID, mm-hmm. I think one of the unintended positives is that it allowed parents an opportunity to get a firsthand view of what's going on in their kids' schools. Yeah. To see what was being taught, to see the culture and things like that. What do you think are 2 of the biggest challenges facing Idahoans in schools today? And if elected, what would you do?
So I think there's one really large issue that we've got right now, and that is the lack of trust we give to parents. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Daniel. That I as a parent watched what was going on in my kids' education the last couple of years, and that's actually why I chose to run in the first place. I felt concerned that some of the things that were being taught didn't align with my values, didn't seem to really reflect the values that I believe Idaho has, and weren't appropriate to be taught in our schools. And so I think we have to get back to trusting parents again, letting them make decisions for their kids. And I honestly think that's the first piece. And then I think the second challenge is how we equip parents to make those decisions. And so I'm a huge proponent of school choice. I believe we should have money follow students to their parents' school of choice. And I think that if we get back to trusting parents and then we equip them with the resources that they need to make those decisions, I think we'll be able to right the ship.
So, one of the Democrats' talking points in Idaho is that Idaho ranks 50th in spending per pupil. But when you look at the actual budget, I think it's like the third largest budget we have in the state. Mm-hmm. In terms of funding, I know you mentioned a second ago school choice and having it follow. Do you think the way we spend the money in schools today is appropriate? Would you do anything different? How we fund education?
Yeah, I think there's several issues to that. I mean, to go back to the first part of your question, the per pupil spending metric is really kind of a worthless metric because it leads to the logical conclusion that if you spend more, you're going to get better results. And we need to look no further than the District of Columbia, which has the highest per pupil spending and one of the lowest student achievements in the country. So if it was just as a matter of spending more money equaling more educational attainment or better outcomes, then that would be great. But that just doesn't work that way. And so I think we do need to look at, take a hard look, honestly, at our school funding formula, which is antiquated, complicated. Very few people in the state really understand it. In fact, there's probably less than 5 people in the entire state of Idaho that could really explain it from top to bottom with exactly what it does and how it works. And so I've actually proposed legislation to address that issue while also expanding school choice in the state of Idaho. The amount of money we give per student varies considerably throughout the state of Idaho. And for example, in Ada County, if you cross Cloverdale Road, your child may get $6,500 per student from the state, or they may get $9,000 from the state per student. And I think that's wrong. I think we need to level the playing field and let our districts have access to more of a fair amount of money per student, and let them trust those districts to spend the money the way that they feel is best, so that way they can make local decisions. Like I said, I've actually have a proposal to do that. If people want to visit my website, durstforidaho.com/EPEA, the bill's right there. They can read it and check out some highlights about what it does.
So the last one we'll wrap up with, make it a little bit of an easy one, and that is, Idahoans are entering their votes next week. Primaries are next week. What message do you want to leave to them prior to them casting their vote?
It's a good question, and I think it's an important question. This race is actually quite simple. This race comes down to 2 competing visions for the future of Idaho schools. One vision believes in the insider, believes in the education establishment, wants to double down on the education system that we have today. The second vision, my vision, is that of an education outsider. I believe we need to do things differently. I think we need to trust parents. I think we need to get government out of the way, and we need to let parents lead as God intended them to. And so when parents and voters go to the ballot box next week, I want them to think about that. I want them to think about whether or not what has done in the past has worked for them and their children. And if it hasn't, I'm asking them for them to consider doing something different, following a different path, trying something new, and putting our education department in the hands of someone who wants to make changes, who wants to prioritize them and place them back in the driver's seat of their children's education.
Brandon, I really appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you.
Good luck next week.
Yes.
And thank you.
All the best. Thank you.
So up next for Superintendent of Public Instruction is Debbie Critchfield. Debbie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we'll start off with a fun one. Just tell us, who's Debbie?
Debbie Critchfield. All right. I am married to Dave. We are farmers in Oakley. He is a 4th-generation farmer. We raised 4 children there that went to public schools. I am a former substitute teacher and local school board member for 10 years. Half of those years I served as chair, which gave me a great experience and opportunity to learn about budgeting, policies, and working with educators, working with parents, working with the community and business leaders. After doing that for 10 years, I had the opportunity to first be appointed to Idaho State Board of Education, first by Governor Otter, and then later reappointed by Governor Little. And during that opportunity, or that experience, I had another learning opportunity to understand how policies at the state level either furthered and promoted those goals and objectives that were intended, or got in the way of what local districts were trying to do or student outcomes. And so I have had nearly 20 years of experience in education at every level, local, state, kindergarten to postgraduate medical education, along with serving on a number of statewide task forces. Again, all intended to bring the focus to a student-centered system.
You touched on it a little bit in that last question, but out of all the things, what makes you the most uniquely qualified to serve in this role?
For me, when I think about the 20 years that I've been involved in education, I got started as a parent, as a substitute teacher, someone that was interested in being a part of what was going on in my local community. And from there, I have sought opportunities to either increase my knowledge so that I could be better at what I was doing at whatever level that I was serving, or opportunities to create the goals, to create that vision. And I think for me to have the experience that I've had locally to the state, working with business leaders, working with our institutions of higher education, and just everything in between makes me very experienced. And the fact that I have been able to serve as a co-chair to a governor's task force and been on a number of other committees that were researching and looking at problems that we could solve. The leadership capability that I have, those skills that I bring to the table to cooperate, to listen, to be a problem solver, and to be able to work with people in ways that help us create the vision that we want and need in Idaho.
So Idaho, like the rest of the country and the world, really has been just crazy the last 2 years. If you think about things like COVID, I do think there was a positive outcome in some of that for the first time, parents really got engaged in what their students were learning in school. And they saw some great things and they saw some not so great things. And there's a lot of concern and a lot of passion. As you think about Idaho schools, what are, say, two of the biggest challenges that you see? And if elected, how would you tackle them?
Education has experienced the biggest disruption in modern times. And it did not, in my opinion, happen. The discord and some of the things that we feel about education right now were not created because of COVID. I think it was highlighted and intensified. We asked our parents to be a partner in education. And we cannot, at this point, ask them to step back away from that. We want to build on that momentum. We want parents to feel as though they have an open door into the schools. And we saw parents making choices for their kids that they had not made before. And Idaho is a school choice state. And we want to continue to build upon that. And we want parents to know that as a state, we respect and honor the choices that they make for their students, regardless of the learning environment that they're in. And over the last 2 years, while president of the Board of Education, I was able to bring forth a change in how schools are funded for their students, which now students or schools are funded by student rather than the seat time. And I think that that's a great change and a great step forward from where we've been in the past. And added to that, the Strong Family, Strong Students. That was a program that I worked on with the governor's office that gave money directly to families to make educational choices for their children. That's another area that I'm excited about, and I think that we need to talk about and continue to expand upon. When I think about where we go from here, we've got to talk about how we prepare and train our students for the opportunities around them and help them to be job ready and help them to see that when they graduate from an Idaho high school that means something. And when I talk about that as I have around the state, it takes in skills, it takes in more vocational training and how we transform the high school experience and anchor that to some type of work-based learning by the time they're a junior and a senior. What a wonderful opportunity that we could provide for our students as they start thinking about what they want to do, what they're interested in, what their skill set is, and what opportunities are in their community, that they're able to experience that in a low-risk environment and know that, hey, maybe I want to go try to be an apprentice or an intern, or maybe I'm interested in some sort of job opportunity in my local community and get credit for that, similar to what we do for kids who are earning college credit while they're in high school. Added to this, I'm calling for a high school requirement for financial literacy. When we talk about our students being able to make personal and financial decisions, we have to prepare them on that financial end. And having financial literacy skills is very different than the skills that a student will learn in algebra or economics, for example. Why is a credit score important? How do you apply for a loan? Why do you care that your job will offer a retirement plan? What are taxes and what does that mean? And in some cases, how do you count back change? And so when I think about the role and the responsibility of education, education is not an outcome. It's the mechanism for which we provide the skills and the training and the preparation for our students to become successful citizens and contributors to their community. These are critical issues that COVID has highlighted, and it's an opportunity that we have as elected officials to create that system.
So, one of the Democrats' favorite talking point in Idaho is that we're 50th out of 50th in spending per student. As superintendent, being in charge of, working with the legislature to change some of the budget things, do you think that where we spend the money is in the right places today? And if you were in role, would you make any changes?
Oh, I think there's always time and room for inspection of our budget. I think that there are some priorities, particularly with literacy. I've been a big and early advocate for how we invest in literacy. I think that those are appropriate dollars going to those places. There are other areas that I think that we need to have the state get out of the way and allow more local control. Local control is a word that is thrown around all the time. Oh, local control, but we rarely talk about it from the budgeting perspective, and remove the line items, remove those restraints and constrictions that the state will put on for our local board members, and allow them to create some of their own priorities and direct some of that money. One of the things that I look forward to as an elected state superintendent is going through an auditing review. I don't know how to maybe say that differently than that, but since I've been at the state level for the last 7 years, I have yet to see our education official, or anyone for that matter, look at our budget and say, here are the investments that we've been making. Do they make sense now? Are these the priorities that we want to have? Are we putting money into those things that we want to deliberately fund, and have that discussion? There are things that could drop off, or things that need to be altered or opened up. And I think there's never a bad time to take a look at the budget and say, we've got more than $600 million have come into education in the last 8 years. And yet there's more discord and less feeling of that ROI than we've had in a long time. And so I think when we talk about the vision that we have for education, it has to include where those dollars go.
So one last one. Election's a week from today. Everyone's going into the ballot box for the primaries. What do you want them to walk away thinking about Debbie Critchfield?
I want voters to know that Idaho deserves a strong educational leader, someone that is ready to create the vision and set that pace for the needs of the 21st century. We have an educational system that is largely designed after an 1850s model. Times are changed, times are different, we know that. We're trying to educate and prepare students for jobs that don't even exist. We want our educators to be prepared before they come into the classroom and while they're in the classroom. We want and need our parents to feel as though they are wanted in the system, and that we provide meaningful opportunities for them to do that. We need our students to be trained and prepared for the jobs that are around them, so that they can be contributing citizens and make wise personal and financial decisions. And I want to bring that vision. I want to set that goal, and I want to work with those folks around the state that can help create what we need. This is an incredible opportunity that we have to create what we need, to transform our system in the ways that are most needed. I have the experience, I have the leadership skills, I have built the relationships, I'm honest, and I want to work with people to bring the wise solutions that we need for our state.
Debbie Critchfield, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
So next we're here with Sherry Ibarra. She's running for Superintendent of Public Instruction. Sherry, thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
So let's pretend that people don't know who you are. I know that's not true, but let's just pretend. So tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Sherry Ibarra. I am your current superintendent of public instruction, and I am married to an Air Force veteran. And we have one son who was a public school student and currently attends the University of Idaho. I am the only superintendent candidate in this race that is a certified teacher, a certified principal, and a certified superintendent in the state of Idaho, all before becoming your current elected superintendent of public instruction. And I do have one pug dog named Chloe that I always like to take around to see the kids when I get an opportunity to get back into classrooms.
So superintendent of schools or public instruction, what in particular makes you uniquely qualified to be in this role?
I am the only certified superintendent in this race. I am the only certified teacher in this race, the only person with the depth of background and knowledge to do this job. Over 20 years of experience and 3 degrees, a Bachelor of Arts in elementary education, a master's degree in administration, in leadership, and then I have a specialist degree, an EDS actually in the superintendency. So I've served in all those roles, and that makes me uniquely qualified to help those in the field, help our kids, and especially our future young Republicans.
So, I'm sure no secret to you. I mean, obviously the last 2 years with COVID and things have been hard. One thing I think that was a positive unintended consequence, though, is that parents got a firsthand view of all the things that were going on in the classroom, what their students were learning, and some things they liked and some things they didn't. As you look into the future, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges facing our schools and our students today? And if reelected, what would you do different, or what would you do to combat those?
As a lifelong educator, we all know that, especially as a third grade teacher, that one of the number one key indicators in a child's success is parental involvement. All educators know that. We have always really made sure that we involve parents in the work that we do. But during COVID, when schools were closed, parents were looking over the shoulders of their children, trying to help them with their schoolwork, and they weren't happy. And so that is the reason I ran my in-person learning bill. When schools closed, I didn't like what I saw. Parents didn't like what they saw. So that piece of legislation passed the House and the Senate, and it's now law. And in-person learning is the number one option for our students in Idaho. So, that was step number one. Step number two, I wrote a letter to our U.S. Attorney General Garland because I wasn't very happy when he called our parents domestic terrorists. It was unacceptable. And again, educators know that one of the number one priorities in a student's success in their school career is to have their parent involved. And I made sure to let him know that Idaho would not stand for that. And then the last thing moving forward, as I've been traveling the state and talking to families, what they've asked me to do is give them some practical strategies for getting involved in their child's school career. They said they didn't want a top-down approach. They didn't want some piece of legislation. They wanted practical ideas to re-engage in their child's school career. And so I will be releasing a parental toolkit with those practical strategies May 1st, so parents have an opportunity to re-engage in their child's educational program moving forward.
So, one of the Democrats' favorite talking points is that Idaho is 50th in spending per pupil. We hear a lot about where do we spend our money. How do you think the school budget, is setting up today? Would you do anything different? Should we change anything?
Well, the Republicans in Idaho did a great job this year in the legislature of making education a priority. So I want to make sure that Idahoans know that. They were great partners. It was a great year for education. But that is one of the things I heard as well as I traveled the state. We don't want to be last for achievement. We don't want to be last for funding. And I heard that from all walks of life. But the statistics that I gave earlier, number one in the nation for college and career, college credits earned while still in high school, number 5 for college and career ready, 17th in the nation for achievement now, and our 5-year graduation rate at an all-time high proves that Idahoans get a lot of bang for their buck. And so, especially these days when we're going to the gas pumps and we're seeing those prices, we are looking as conservative Republicans for a lot of bang for our buck. And I don't blame folks in Idaho, but moving forward, I think one of the things that I want voters to know is the funding for public schools, that funding formula is the responsibility of the legislature. The state superintendent does not set the funding formula. But I do know that my job is to make recommendations, and I have sat on a task force to do just that. Although that kind of fell apart, and we're going to have to get back at the table and take a look at our funding formula because it's over 20 years old. And it is a system sometimes of haves and have-nots. For example, if a district can run a levy and another district cannot run a levy, then that creates that system of haves and have-nots. One of the ideas I'd like to bring forward, should I be reelected by the people of Idaho, is to look at, I sit on the land board, and we do get royalties in our school districts from our natural resources. And one of the things I'd like to do is start a savings account for some of the facilities that we might see that are aging, to help with that funding formula piece that school districts can tap into. And so that will be something I'll be working on in the future. But I think Idaho has done well and really gets a lot of bang for their buck with the budget for public education.
So one last question. Idahoans are heading into the voting booths a week from today. What message do you want them to walk away with as they head in there?
I've done the job that Idahoans have hired me to do. We are 17th in the nation now for achievement. We are 5th in the nation for college and career ready, number 1 in the nation for college credits earned while still in high school. Our 5-year graduation rate is at an all-time high. And stick with me while I take us to top 10 in the nation for achievement. And we work together with the young Republicans and the rest of the state to rebuild trust in Idaho's public schools. I would also add to that, like the kids say, please vote for Sherry in the primary on May 17th.
Sherry Ibarra, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Before we close, there's 2 things I want to remind you of. First, please don't forget to get out there and vote 1 week from today on May 17th. Regardless of who you're voting for, it's important to have your voice heard. That person has an opportunity to represent you and me and the entire state for the next 2, 4, or 6 years, and we need to take that seriously. The last thing is really to remind you that on May 18th, we all need to wake up, regardless of who wins the primary, and support that candidate. For all the differences, for all the uniqueness that God made with each of us, we're still one Republican Party. We have way more in common than we have apart. And so no matter who wins, I want to ask you to rally behind them, just like we will with Idaho Young Republicans, just like we will with the state party. And we're going to get out there and do everything we can to help that candidate win the election in November. That's how we keep conservative values alive in the state. That's how we keep Idaho red. For all that, I want to say thank you again. Hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care, God bless, and God bless Idaho.